Welcome back to Broadcasting Seeds, the show where we pull back the veil on all things strange, shadowy, and, let's be honest, just plain weird. I'm Bennett Tanton, your solo guide into the realms of the unexplained, the unexplored, and the outright hidden. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not, well, you know what to expect, don't you? Today's episode lands on one of the most charged days in our American calendar, Election Day, November 5th, 2024. Now don't worry, we're not here to analyze swing states or predict which party is going to control the House. Nah, today we're doing something a little different. We're looking into the unseen forces that might actually have their hands on the wheel. That's right, we're talking about how the paranormal, the supernatural, and the conspiratorial threads have wound their way into the very fabric of the presidency itself. Think about it. For every candidate that makes it into the White House, there's an initiation into a world far beyond policy debates and diplomacy dinners. We're talking about presidents supposedly having encounters with aliens, secret society handshakes, government-sanctioned psychic experiments, and yes, even ghosts in the White House. Wild, right? But here's the thing. If we believe even half of what's rumored to go on, then the president isn't just the leader of the free world. They're practically a member of the paranormal underground. So, in today's episode, we're going to break it all down. I'll be walking you through 5 segments, each one focused on a different facet of this hidden nexus where political power meets the strange, the spiritual, and the outright supernatural. We'll dive into tales of presidential UFO knowledge, psychic warfare programs, White House ghost stories, occult symbols, and finally the ultimate conspiracy theory, the deep state, and the possibility that our presidents aren't really in control at all. Buckle up, folks. Today, we're not just voting on the future, we're exploring the hidden forces that might already be steering it. Ready? Let's get into it. Let's kick this off with what's probably the biggest mystery out there, the possibility that U.S. presidents have had first-hand knowledge of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. Now, the average American doesn't get a crash course on aliens when they turn 18, but rumor has it that things are a bit different for the commander-in-chief. Let's start with Dwight D. Eisenhower. Legend has it that in 1954, Ike wasn't just out golfing when he disappeared from public view for a few hours. Nope. The story goes that he slipped off to a secret meeting at Edwards Air Force Base to make first contact with extraterrestrials. According to some reports, Ike and a delegation of aliens came to a little understanding, some technology in exchange for permission to conduct certain experiments on humans. Now, is there any hard evidence of this meeting? Not exactly. But the rumors persisted for decades, and let's face it, Ike was a military guy. If anyone was going to negotiate a treaty with visitors from another world, it'd be him. Fast forward to the 1970s, and we get another president who allegedly wasn't just watching the skies. He'd had a close encounter himself. Jimmy Carter, that good old Southern gentleman, reported seeing a UFO before he even took office. He was so shaken by it that he actually filed an official report with the International UFO Bureau in Oklahoma. Carter even promised that he'd open up the UFO files if he became president. But once he got into office, nothing. Radio silence. Why? Did someone pull him aside and tell him, look, Jimmy, some things are better left in the dark? And then there's Bill Clinton. Back in the 90s, when the internet was still dial-up, Bill reportedly pushed to find out about UFOs and the Roswell incident. He assigned his friend Webster Hubbell, a former Justice Department official, to look into it. But according to Hubbell, the search hit a wall. Even the president couldn't get all the answers. Imagine that. The most powerful man in the free world asking about little green men and getting stonewalled. Makes you wonder if there's someone out there with more pull than the president, doesn't it? Oh, and let's not forget the guy who put Space Force on the map, Donald Trump. Now say what you will about Trump, but he had a knack for putting things right out in the open. When he announced Space Force, the conspiracy world lit up like the Vegas Strip. Was this just a response to the advancements in military tech by other nations, or was it a calculated move to prepare for something not of this earth? Trump even hinted a few times that he knew things about UFOs that he couldn't talk about. Whether it's bravado or genuine secrecy, it adds another layer to this puzzle. Here's the thing. Presidents from Eisenhower to Obama have all been asked about UFOs at one point or another. Some made promises, some brushed it off, and some, like Carter, genuinely seemed to want answers. But somehow, each one came up short, or so they say. It begs the question, is there something out there that's too big, too strange, or maybe too dangerous for even the president to handle? All right. Now that we've covered presidents and their alleged brushes with alien life, let's move on to something even more outlandish, psychic warfare. Because if the government's keeping alien secrets, why not psychic powers too, right? We've dipped our toes into the world of extraterrestrial secrets. Now let's wade into an even stranger chapter of government history, psychic warfare. Yeah, you heard me right. Psychic powers, mind control, remote viewing, the kind of stuff that feels straight out of a Marvel comic, but according to some documents, it wasn't all just fantasy. In fact, the U.S. government had a serious interest in psychic phenomena and wasn't shy about putting taxpayer dollars to work in exploring it. Let's start with one of the most infamous government experiments, Project MK-Ultra. In the 1950s, the CIA launched MK-Ultra, supposedly as a response to rumored Soviet mind control programs. This wasn't just a team of agents sitting around reading tarot cards. MK-Ultra was serious business, and it got real dark, real fast. It involved experimenting with psychedelics, hypnotism, and even outright brainwashing, all in the name of cracking the human mind wide open. The project lasted until the early 1970s, and it was so secretive that even presidents weren't fully in the loop. One of the major rumors? That MK-Ultra was looking into how to create psychic soldiers, people who could spy with their minds, influence decisions remotely, and even control others. Now, we don't know exactly how much each president knew about this, but Nixon allegedly got a whiff of it and wasn't thrilled. There's a story that he was horrified by the lengths the CIA was willing to go. So, who knows? Maybe the president's not always calling the shots when it comes to projects like these. After MK-Ultra, the government went on to Project Stargate. No, not the one with the intergalactic portals. This Stargate was a program dedicated to remote viewing. The idea that trained individuals could psychically observe distant locations or events. Picture it. Spies without binoculars, sitting in a room with nothing but a pencil and paper, supposedly able to describe locations halfway across the world. Sounds crazy, right? But it went on for years, spanning the Carter and Reagan administrations, with reports that some remote viewers actually produced useful intel. President Carter even confirmed this, admitting that a remote viewer located a lost Soviet aircraft in Africa. And remember, Carter was the guy who reported seeing a UFO, so he was open-minded about these things. Still, even he seemed uncomfortable with the idea of the government dabbling in psychic warfare. But just like the UFO files, the deeper Carter dug, the more resistance he met. And when Reagan took over, Stargate continued operating in the shadows with only a select few in on the details. This fascination with the paranormal wasn't just confined to the U.S. either. The Soviets were deeply involved in similar experiments. It was a psychic arms race of sorts, where both nations believed the other was using mind control and telepathy. This wasn't just Cold War paranoia. It was a genuine competition to see if the human mind could be weaponized. And if there's one thing we know about the U.S. government, it's that if they think someone else is doing it, they want to be doing it better. Now, was the president really in control of these programs, or were they kept in the dark about the gritty details? It's hard to say. Stargate officially shut down in 1995, but some believe these programs never truly ended. Instead, they just went further underground, hidden from even the highest offices. Because if remote viewing and psychic espionage could yield even a hint of usable information, you can bet someone's going to keep that train running. All right, so we've covered UFOs and psychic warfare, two mind-bending areas where presidential knowledge seems limited, to say the least. Next, let's take it down a notch in terms of mystery, but ramp up the chills because we're heading to one of the most haunted places in America, the White House itself. Let's get spooky. So we've talked about presidents allegedly meeting aliens and dabbling in psychic warfare, but how about something a little closer to home? And by home, I mean 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House. Yep, that grand old building where decisions are made, policies are debated, and according to a lot of people, ghosts roam the halls. The White House has a reputation as one of the most haunted buildings in the United States. Given its long history and the fact that it's seen some pretty intense moments, that might not come as a huge surprise. But here's the kicker. We're not just talking about random spooky sightings or a weird creak here and there. I mean, we're talking about presidents, first ladies, and visiting dignitaries who have all reported strange experiences over the years. Let's start with the granddaddy of White House ghosts, Abraham Lincoln. The story goes that Lincoln's spirit has been spotted countless times since his assassination in 1865. FDR, Winston Churchill, and Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands all reported seeing Lincoln or sensing his presence. Churchill's story is a classic. One night, after a long bath, he reportedly came out of the bathroom, cigar in hand, only to find Lincoln's ghost standing by the fireplace. Churchill, with that dry British wit, supposedly said, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." Lincoln didn't stick around for small talk, but imagine that scene for a second. A ghostly Abe Lincoln watching Churchill in his bathrobe. That's something straight out of a supernatural sitcom. Then there's the story of Queen Wilhelmina, who was staying at the White House during World War II. One night, she heard a knock on her door, opened it, and reportedly fainted when she saw Lincoln standing there. Now, it could be a case of jet lag and nerves, but when royalty starts fainting at the sight of your ghost, you know it's serious. And Lincoln isn't the only spectral resident. Abigail Adams, wife of John Adams, was the first lady to live in the White House. Back then, the place was still under construction, and it was Abigail's job to handle laundry in a damp, drafty mansion. Over the years, people have reported seeing her ghost walking through the East Room, arms full of laundry. Kind of a tragic image, right? You spend your afterlife stuck doing laundry in the place you once called home. But hey, Maybe she's just checking in, making sure the new folks haven't completely ruined the house. Now here's where it gets even weirder. Harry Truman, not exactly the kind of guy you'd peg as a believer in ghosts, reportedly heard footsteps echoing through the halls and knocking on doors when he was alone. He even wrote to his wife about it, saying that the place felt haunted. If a guy like Truman, known for his plain-speaking attitude, says the White House is haunted, you've got to wonder. Some say the place just has too much history to be normal. All those high-stakes decisions, the pressure, the sleepless nights, maybe it leaves an imprint. Maybe the walls soak up the energy, and when the lights go down, that energy starts to play tricks on anyone who's still awake. Or maybe, just maybe, these spirits stick around because they still have unfinished business. Maybe Lincoln's ghost is still roaming because he died with so much left unresolved. A war half finished, a nation still broken. So what does this mean for the presidents who come and go? Imagine being the leader of the free world and bumping into your predecessor. Literally. You're not just inheriting an office. You're inheriting a legacy that might still be wandering the halls after dark. It's a reminder that the White House isn't just a symbol of power. It's a place with a life of its own, and maybe, just maybe, a few lives that never fully left. All right, from ghosts in the White House, we're heading into the world of symbols and secret societies. Buckle up, because next, we're diving into the strange fascination that some presidents seem to have had with the occult. We've gone through alien encounters, psychic experiments, and even ghostly visitors in the White House. But here's where things get even murkier. Let's talk about symbols, secret societies, and a little something we'll call the occult. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just some Da Vinci Code stuff, hear me out. There's a strange and fascinating trail of presidents who seem to have an obsession, or at the very least a strong interest in the darker, more mystical side of things. Let's start with the basics. Secret societies. We all know about the Freemasons, right? They're probably the most famous of all the secret societies, with rituals, symbols, and ranks that sound like something out of a mystery novel. What you might not know is just how many U.S. presidents were Freemasons. Washington, Monroe, both Roosevelts and Truman were all members, and they weren't exactly quiet about it. Freemasonry has its roots in medieval stonemason guilds, but by the time the U.S. was founded, it had evolved into a fraternity of powerful men with a network that stretched across continents. A lot of the founding principles of the U.S., freedom, brotherhood, equality, mirror those of Freemasonry, and some conspiracy theorists believe that the Founding Fathers didn't just want political independence. They wanted to create a new Atlantis based on Masonic ideals. This brings us to the symbols. Ever notice the pyramid with the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill? That's right out of the Masonic playbook. And no, it's not just an artistic choice. According to some interpretations, it symbolizes enlightenment and knowledge, as well as a higher power watching over the country. That's spooky enough on its own, but the idea that this symbol was chosen to represent America hints at a much deeper, possibly occult philosophy behind the founding of the nation. And it wasn't just the Founding Fathers. Fast forward to FDR, who had a deep fascination with the occult and was a high-ranking Mason. During his time in office, FDR oversaw a significant redesign of the dollar bill. He's the one responsible for adding that pyramid and eye. Some say he was subtly embedding Masonic and occult symbols into American currency, symbols that would remain in front of people's eyes every single day. Then there's Ronald Reagan. Reagan, for all his cowboy charm and tough guy persona, was heavily influenced by astrology. In fact, his wife, Nancy Reagan, famously consulted astrologers to help plan his schedule, especially after the 1981 assassination attempt. She believed the stars could offer protection and guidance, and reportedly so did he. For a sitting U.S. president to rely on astrological advice was, to put it mildly, unconventional. And yet that's exactly what happened. To some people, this was just a quirky habit. To others, it was evidence that even leaders of the modern era couldn't resist the pull of the supernatural. And Reagan wasn't alone. JFK, Nixon, and LBJ are all rumored to have shown an interest in various forms of the occult. Some sources claim JFK was fascinated by ancient mysteries and supposedly wanted to share knowledge about extraterrestrials with the public, a goal that conspiracy theorists argue might have led to his downfall. Nixon, meanwhile, had some bizarre interests that went beyond the political. And though he wasn't exactly a mystical guy, he did surround himself with people who dabbled in the strange and supernatural. Then we have the secret societies within the government. Every so often, names like Skull and Bones, the Bohemian Grove, and even the Illuminati pop up in conversations about presidents and their connections to hidden networks. Skull and Bones, in particular, is an exclusive society at Yale that counts both Bushes, George H.W. and George W., among its members. The society has long been shrouded in mystery, with people claiming its members are groomed for powerful roles in government and business. Whether this is just a fancy college club or a training ground for future leaders is up for debate, but it's one more layer in the strange relationship between presidents and secret societies. But here's the big question. Why would the most powerful people in the world need to tap into symbols, rituals, or even astrology? Is it just a quirky tradition, or is there something they believe these symbols unlock? Some theorists think that these symbols and societies offer a kind of spiritual insurance for the leaders of the country, as if aligning themselves with certain powers might somehow safeguard their legacy or even their soul. And maybe that's the crux of it. The office of the president isn't just about governing a nation. It's about inheriting a kind of spiritual responsibility that transcends laws and policies. Some leaders seem to have taken this responsibility very seriously, looking to the ancient and the mystical as they try to guide the nation. Whether it's the all-seeing eye, the Masonic compass, or a reliance on the stars, these symbols have left an indelible mark on the presidency and the country itself. All right, we've gone deep into secret societies and symbols, but we're saving the biggest conspiracy for last. Next, we're talking about the deep state and whether or not the president really has full control over the secrets of the country. We're in the final stretch, and I saved the big one for last. If you stuck with me this far, I'm guessing you're ready for the granddaddy of all conspiracy theories, the concept of the deep state. Now, the deep state gets tossed around in political conversations these days, but what does it actually mean? Is it a real shadow government pulling strings from behind the scenes? And how does the president fit into all this? At its core, the deep state refers to a network of powerful, unelected officials embedded within the government, intelligence agencies, and even major corporations. These people allegedly operate beyond the reach of democratic oversight and answer to no one, not even the president. It's the ultimate conspiracy. An invisible hand guiding decisions, filtering information, and, in some cases, actively suppressing the truth. Take a moment to consider this. If the president is the top of the pyramid, the commander-in-chief, then what kind of force would be strong enough to keep secrets even from him? The theory goes that every president inherits not just the powers of the office, but also a series of boundaries, things they're simply not allowed to know or touch. Think of it as an invisible box, one that every president is placed in, where they're given just enough information to keep the machine running, but not enough to see the whole blueprint. Remember when we talked about Bill Clinton earlier? Here's a guy who, as president, openly asked about UFOs and Roswell only to be shut down. He reportedly told his aide, Webster Hubble, to find out the truth about extraterrestrials, and yet Hubble hit wall after wall. If the leader of the free world can't get a straight answer, that should tell us something about how deep this rabbit hole goes. And Clinton wasn't the only one. Every modern president has faced similar barriers, from Kennedy to Obama. JFK, in particular, is at the heart of some of the darkest theories. Some believe his assassination was a message, a warning to any future president who might think about digging too deep. Did he stumble upon a secret so dark that he had to be removed? It's impossible to say for sure, but it adds weight to the idea that presidents are kept on a need-to-know basis. Now let's talk about the CIA, the NSA, and other intelligence agencies. These organizations are theoretically under presidential control, but history has shown that they often act independently. The CIA's involvement in coups, covert wars, and experimental programs like MK Ultra are well documented. Yet, time and again, we see presidents blindsided by the actions of these agencies. Reagan claimed to have no knowledge of the Iran-Contra affair, a covert operation that went straight against U.S. policy. The official line was that the CIA went rogue. But could it be that the president simply isn't at the top of the food chain? Then there's the National Security Agency, the NSA, a behemoth of data and surveillance. Created under Truman, the NSA grew into one of the most secretive and powerful organizations in the world, operating largely outside the public eye. When Edward Snowden leaked classified NSA documents, it was a shock not just to Americans, but to world leaders. The surveillance capabilities were so vast and invasive that it's hard to believe even the president knows the full scope of what they're capable of. The NSA operates with a kind of autonomy that would give the average citizen nightmares if they really understood its power. Some people believe that these agencies aren't just autonomous. They're the ones running the show, that the president is a public face, a kind of figurehead, while the real decisions, the real power are hidden somewhere deep within the intelligence community. This is where the concept of the deep state gets its teeth. It's not just that certain things are kept from the president. It's that the president might actually be controlled by forces he or she can't see or understand. And then, of course, there's the idea of a presidential chain of secrets. According to this theory, every president is given access to some deep, dark truths when they take office, but only a select few. Think of it like a hierarchy of secrets. A new president might be briefed on certain classified programs, shown some files about UFOs, but they're only getting the top layer. The real meat, the stuff that could unravel society or shift the balance of power globally, that stays buried, accessible only to a handful of people who will never be elected, who never appear in the public eye, and who probably don't care about democracy. Imagine the frustration. You get elected, make it to the highest office in the land, thinking you'll finally have the power to make real change. But then, as soon as you're sworn in, you're told, "Congratulations, Mr. President. Here's what you need to know, and here's what you need to forget you ever saw." And if you push back, well, that's where the conspiracy goes deeper. Some believe presidents who dig too deep are neutralized one way or another. Resignations, scandals, even health issues, all conveniently timed. So what does this mean for society? If the president, the person we're told is the leader of the free world, isn't actually in control, then who is? And more importantly, what are they hiding from us? The deep state, shadow government, whatever you want to call it. It's not just a conspiracy theory, it's a lens, a way of seeing power and secrecy that forces us to question everything we think we know about who's really in charge. All right, that's the end of our episode for today, but we're not done yet. Stick around for the outro where we'll wrap up and give you some food for thought on Election Day 2024. Are we really voting for change, or are we just voting for a new face to put on the same old machine? All right, folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Broadcasting Seeds. Here we are on Election Day 2024, and we've just peeled back some of the layers around the presidency that most people never see or even think about. From rumored UFO encounters to secret societies, haunted hallways, psychic experiments, and the mysterious, shadowy hand of the deep state, we've covered a lot of ground. And maybe, just maybe, we've opened a few doors you didn't even know were there. Now here's the thing. We don't know the absolute truth about any of this, but maybe that's exactly the point. The deeper you go into these rabbit holes, the clearer it becomes that power and secrecy go hand in hand, that the decisions shaping our lives might not all be made in the light of day or even by the people we think are making them. And when you cast your vote, it's worth asking yourself, how much control do these elected officials really have? If today's episode made you think a little differently about things, if it left you with more questions than answers, good. That's the point. Here on Broadcasting Seeds, we're not just digging up the strange and unexplained, we're planting ideas, giving you some food for thought. Because sometimes the real power is in asking the uncomfortable questions and daring to look at the things we're not supposed to see. Before you go, don't forget to like, share, and review the podcast. It helps more people find these episodes. And hey, maybe we'll all start asking these questions together. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms. And if you're really into today's episode, share it with someone who might want to take a look behind the curtain too. Thanks for tuning in on this election day. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and as always, keep questioning the seeds of what we're told. I'm Bennett Tanton, and I'll catch you next time on Broadcasting Seeds.
I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared, hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe on my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they feeling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All the lights are fading now. All my life is fading now. All my life is fading now. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All my life is fading now. All my life is fading now. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Trapped in my nightmares.